Today on the Unity Motorsports Garage, we're going to take a look back at the 426 Hemi. Is it the greatest of all time, the GOAT, or is it overrated? We're going to look back at this and look at some history and let you decide. 426 Hemi was born out of necessity, as Mopar had been using its max wedge engines to compete in NASCAR, and while it ran good, it wasn't great. It didn't produce the top-end speeds needed to compete with the Fords and the new Chevy Mystery engine that debuted in 1963.
But Lorenzen and Jarrett haven't given up. Yes, sir, a duel right to the finish. And it's Tiny Lund, the long shot. Winner over Fred Lorenzen with Ned Jarrett third, all three driving 63 Fords. As Tiny, now out of gas, has to coast into the winner's circle. There's the usual ceremonies for a really bushed but happy winner. And to share their well-earned victory, here's Tiny's pit crew and the very proud Wood brothers.
Chrysler engineers were challenged to adapt Hemi-style cylinder heads to the 426 raised block, creating the 426 Hemi. Everything was going great until the last few minutes before the Daytona 500. They realized that there were problems with the casting of the block itself. It would crack, it had endurance issues, so the mad dash to get the racers new blocks down to Daytona so that they could get them installed into the race cars before race day became a true challenge. Richard Petty and his crew didn't take this as a setback. With his brother Maurice doing the engine work, they put the 43 into the winner's circle, and Plymouth scored first, second, and third with pure dominance. Ford knew that their 427 FE was no match for the Hemi after that race, so they set out and did what's called the 90-day wonder. They developed a 427 single overhead cam Hemi engine of their own to compete with. When the word was out on the street about the 427 sock motor, the Mopar camp set out to build the Doomsday Hemi, a double overhead cam design that was meant to destroy all own-takers. When Bill France of NASCAR heard about these crazy exotic engines being built, he decided to put an end to it then and there, banning both the 426 Hemi and the 427 single overhead cam engines for 1965. What do you do if you're Richard Petty and your engine just got outlawed? You go drag racing, of course. And that's what he did for the 1965 season. But in 1966, he would return to the super speedways as NASCAR would allow the Hemi engine if they would install that engine in 500 production cars. And there, the Street Hemi was born. The Street 426 Hemi was something to behold. With those Carter carburetors up top, a solid lifter cam, this thing was a serious street contender. First making its debut in the Dodge Charger and in the Plymouth Belvedere series. Let's take a ride with Ronnie Socks as he puts a 1966 Satellite through the paces to see what it would run.
And the difference between a good driver and a great driver is also a fraction of a second. It takes concentration, coordination, and split-second timing to be a pro. Ronnie Socks is a real pro. Let's see what time he turns in the Hemi. Elapsed time 13.29. Top speed 107.91.
The 426 Hemi went on to power some of Mopar's greatest muscle cars, from the Roadrunners to the Cudas, you name it. and the engine pretty much remained unchanged from 1966 until 1971, with the exception of 1970. They went from a solid flat tappet cam to a hydraulic cam. This was to make the engine a little bit more drivable. But as you can see, by the late 1960s, the writing was on the wall, as Mopar started to try to develop a new Hemi engine called the Ball Stud engine. It was done in an effort to try to save the Hemi, but they decided to let the Hemi go out with a bang in 1971. They never wanted this race engine to be tuned down and lose its cool. With the 426 Hemi's reputation safe on the street, on the racetrack it was a completely different matter. In the late 1960s, things were heating up between Ford and Chrysler. The aero wars were in full swing, and when Richard Petty did not get his Superbird like he wanted, he took a one-year hiatus and went to Ford just to prove that he could win there. And afterwards, Plymouth caved in and gave him what he wanted, the Plymouth Superbird. Then it became a race to see who could go 200 miles per hour on a closed course first. When it comes to breaking 200 miles per hour on a closed course, it was none other than Buddy Baker driving Cotton Owens Dodge, and we're getting ready to take a look at that as it happened.
Notable achievement in motor racing that occurred this week. This was Buddy Baker, a top NASCAR stock car driver, on Tuesday of this week at the new 2.66-mile Alabama International Speedway in Talladega, Alabama. During runs conducted for transmission testing, Buddy became the first man in history to break the 200-mile-per-hour barrier on a closed race course, and you're watching him do it here in his winged Dodge stock racing car. At full speed right now, flat out at Talladega. The Talladega is an ultra-fast track, the fastest in the world, as a matter of fact, and on this run, Baker averaged 200.096 miles an hour. And incidentally, ABC will be televising the Alabama 500 from Talladega live on Sunday, April 12th, with the local area down there blacked out, of course. Out of turn 3 and on the high banking going into turn 4. Part of the reason for the high speeds at Talladega, of course, is the exceptionally high banking, which is 33 degrees. Buddy Baker achieved this awesome lap after several warm-up tours of the course, and afterwards he came back out again and did even better, 200.447, and there he is in the home stretch. Buddy Baker at 200. After the run, Roger Baer, the Speedway's public relations director, asked Buddy how it felt to be the first man to break the 200-mile-per-hour barrier.
Gosh, it's the most wonderful feeling I've had in a long, long time. There's something that nobody can ever take away from you, being the first guy to run 200 miles an hour on a closed course circuit.
The 1970 NASCAR season ended up with Bobby Isaac winning the championship. This was signaling the end for the aero wars of NASCAR. NASCAR mandated that they go back to running full production bodies, and that left David Pearson and Richard Petty battling it out with their big blocks on the superspeedways and regular production cars. By 1975, the Hemi was going to be gone from NASCAR, and it had left its mark there. But it was going to leave an even bigger mark in drag racing, and that's where we're headed next. The 426 Hemi had proved its dominance in NASCAR, but proving its dominance in drag racing was going to take a little bit of time, as it was going to take racers a time period to figure this engine out. But once they did, it left its mark on history, and it will never be able to be erased. The 426 Hemi found immediate success in the stock, superstock, and factory experimental ranks, but it was going to prove a challenge for the top fuel guys. But little did they know that it was going to set history, as it was going to give a woman by the name of Shirley Sheehan the first win in NHRA history. Top fuel racers had been relying on the 392 Hemi from years past. When the 426 came out, they had very high hopes for this engine, but they soon found out that it was called the Elephant for a reason. It wouldn't run. They tried to apply the same tricks as they did to the 392, and it just wouldn't run. That is, until Don Garlits figured out what made it tick, and he done it by accident. Don, being frustrated by the 426 performance, he decided that he was going to try to blow it up because Chrysler was trying to pressure him into running this engine. So he gave it what he called the Bateman twist. He put like 50 degrees of ignition timing in it, thinking that it would just destroy itself. It didn't. It went 219 miles an hour and he never looked back. Let's watch Big Daddy as he takes the 426 to the 1968 U.S. Nationals win.
Tension mounts as the two big fuelers take their place at the start line. All eyes are on the staging line. Carboni is too eager, and he goes up in smoke. Big Daddy becomes the first man to win 2 Top Fuel national titles in a row. Garlitz takes home $7,000 top eliminator money. And as Garlitz said, that isn't all. Endorsements will gross $30,000 to $35,000 to the winner. To the drag race team, there's nothing like rolling into the winner's circle to claim their title, trophy, and prize money.
By 1968, Chrysler was focused on superstock racing, as they knew that it would turn into selling cars. So they had Hurst manufactured Hemi Darts and Hemi Barracudas for superstock racing, with Dick Landy running the Dodge team and Ronnie Sox on the Plymouth side. It set the stage for what was coming next, and that was going to be pro stock in 1970, and that was going to push the Hemi even further in development.
The Plymouth factory team of Sox and Martin, manager Buddy Martin and driver Ronnie Sox, brings one of the most incredible records in all motorsport to the World Finals, literally winning everything in sight. Every major pro stock class championship at least once, 9 in all, and 95% of their races since 1965. To top it off, they've never lost at Dallas. In drag racing, there's nobody heavier than Sox and Martin.
I got a little habits like checking the tire pressure and make sure the tire pressure is right, because if these tires get off maybe 1 pound from side to side, it will make the car weave a little bit when you drop the hammer. Keep myself busy and try to keep myself pumped up where I can keep my concentration high. I've got to really concentrate on this, because the lack of concentration on that Christmas tree is the worst thing that can happen to you.
Ronnie Sox beats Harlan Banke by 6/100ths of a second. Ronnie Sox, NHRA Pro Stock World Champion.
From the 1970 and 1971 season, Ronnie Sox and Buddy Martin won everything, and this made people upset. NHRA changed the rules in 1972, allowing small block combinations to come into the field in short wheelbase cars, changing the history of pro stock forever. But Mopar didn't rest on its laurels. They upgraded their cylinder heads to the D-Series heads, and if you notice, you got dual plugs on the cylinder head there, which would come into play on the new engine, the 3rd gen Hemi. And as power levels kept going up in Top Fuel, so did the need for a block that could handle that kind of power. Maladon was the first on the scene, but the problem was the block wasn't serviceable out in the field, which led to Keith Black's design. His design, you could fix that block out in the field, and that changed Top Fuel racing through the course of history. From the mid-1970s, when you had about 2,000 horsepower, all the way through the decades until today, you're talking about an engine that is producing over 10,000 horsepower in today's trim in Top Fuel racing. If that's not an achievement, I don't know what is, because there's no other engine in history that can match the performance of the 426 Hemi. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching. Leave it in the comments what you think about the 426 Hemi. Was it the greatest of all time? And until next time, this is Andy from Unity Motorsports Garage. I will catch you later.